So think back to the very first time you were trapped in one of those customer service doom loops with an early generation chatbot.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Right. Like if
Okay.
you've been in the tech or business space for any amount of time, you know exactly the scenario I'm talking about. You type in this highly specific, really urgent problem, and the system immediately hits you with that robotic, entirely unhelpful response.
The classic, I didn't quite catch that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Please select from the following 3 irrelevant menu options. And you just end up mashing to the 0 key, desperately typing human over and over again. And you're just watching your resolution time stretch into the absolute abyss.
I mean, it was a fundamental failure of user experience. We essentially deployed these, glorified interactive voice response systems, dressed them up with a little chat interface, and just expected consumers to adapt to these rigid, pre-programmed decision trees.
And the general consensus was always that consumers absolutely hated them.
Oh, despise them.
But as we start this deep dive into the source material provided by AetherLink today, we have to confront this statistical paradox that completely shatters that legacy narrative.
It really does.
Because if you look at the global data right now, AI-driven customer service systems are actively handling between 65 and 85% of all routine customer contacts.
Which is a massive volume.
Huge. And rather than resulting in this mass exodus of frustrated users, customer satisfaction scores for these specific interactions have actually surged to 87%.
Yeah, 87%. Which, it represents a complete inversion of our historical expectations.
Yeah.
We've transitioned from an era where consumers actively avoided automated deflection tools to a reality where they actually prefer them for specific types of interactions.
Right. So our focus today is really decoding the architecture behind that 87% satisfaction rate.
Right.
We're looking at how Amsterdam's highly concentrated tech scene is kind of serving as ground zero for this transformation. And more importantly, what this technological leap means for your own business's customer service strategy as we look toward 2026.
Yeah, and to understand the velocity of this shift, you really have to look at the environment that's driving it. Amsterdam is essentially this pressure cooker for technological innovation right now.
It really is.
We're talking about a remarkably dense ecosystem. It's currently home to over 1,200 established tech companies and more than 8,500 startups.
Wow. That's incredibly dense.
Right. So whether you're looking at a fast-moving e-commerce player scaling up in the Zuidas business district or a legacy fintech firm trying to modernize its infrastructure, the adoption of these new AI architectures is no longer just a theoretical roadmap item.
Yeah, it's not a nice to have anymore.
Exactly. It is a survival mechanism for scale. Because if 75% of customers now actively prefer using an AI agent for their simple questions, failing to provide that instant frictionless experience actually becomes a massive competitive disadvantage.
Totally. From an operational standpoint, relying purely on human capital to handle peak load times like holiday shopping surges or major product launches, it's just a mathematical possibility at this point.
You simply cannot balloon your headcount fast enough to meet those exponential spikes in demand without completely destroying your profit margin.
Right. So to figure out how these companies are managing that scale while hitting an 87% satisfaction rate, we kind of have to look under the hood.
Yeah.
Because that level of satisfaction is definitively not coming from those old keyword matching bots we were just talking about.
No, definitely not.
The fundamental architecture of this system has shifted from scripted, localized logic to what the industry calls agentic AI.
And that distinction, the difference between a scripted bot and an agentic AI, is the absolute core driver of these new efficiency metrics.
So break that down for us. What does that actually mean?
Well, traditional chatbots were essentially just database query tools built on static decision trees. The user provided an input, the system scanned a localized database for a matching keyword string, and it just returned a pre-written block of text.
It was basically fetching text. Like the bot itself had no authorization or capability to actually manipulate the back-end systems.
Exactly. It lacked agency. It could point the customer to the refund policy, but it couldn't actually process the refund.
Right.
Agentic AI, however, is integrated directly into the company's operational APIs. It is engineered to execute autonomous tasks without human intervention.
Oh, wow. So it's actually doing the work.
Exactly. So when a customer requests a refund now, The agentic AI uses tokenized authentication to securely access the customer's purchase history. It queries the payment gateway to verify the transaction status, calculates the eligible refund amount based on your dynamic policy parameters, and then it actively executes the ledger update to return the funds.
Okay, the analogy that comes to mind here is the difference between a digital table of contents and, like, an empowered new hire.
I like that.
Right. Like the old bots could merely point you to the correct page in the manual. But agentic AI is like bringing on a highly competent employee, handing them a corporate credit card, giving them right access to your CRM, and trusting them to actually resolve the customer's issue end to end.
That is exactly it. And that level of autonomous execution fundamentally alters the unit economics of customer support. The deployment data from AetherBot, which is AetherLink's specific AI agent solution, it demonstrates exactly how dramatic this shift is.
Let's hear the numbers.
Businesses in the Amsterdam ecosystem deploying these agentic AI solutions are logging a 40% faster resolution time across the board.
A 40% reduction in resolution time. That is staggering when you apply it to millions of interactions. I mean, you're nearly having the friction a customer experiences.
Yeah, and the downstream effect on the balance sheet is just as significant. Those same companies are reporting a 35% drop in overall support costs within the first 6 months of implementation.
Wow, 35% in 6 months. Which, naturally leads to the immediate anxiety that ripples through literally any support organization when a CTO brings up autonomous AI.
The fear of total workforce replacement.
Exactly. Because if the system is resolving issues 40% faster and dropping costs by 35%, the assumption is just that human agents are being managed out of the building.
It's a highly prevalent concern, understandably, but analyzing the actual workflow data reveals that this transformation is fundamentally about reallocation, not wholesale replacement.
How so?
Because the agentic AI is autonomously clearing out the massive volume of repetitive, low-complexity tasks. The basic refunds, the order tracking, the password resets, it acts as an incredibly effective filter. The data shows that escalations to human agents actually drop by up to 45%.
So you're immediately pulling 45% of the noise out of the human queue.
Yes.
That makes so much sense. I remember being stuck in a customer service doom loop with an airline once, where the bot just refused to escalate my complex rebooking issue because I couldn't phrase it in a way its scripted logic understood.
And that's so frustrating.
It was. By the time I finally reached a human, we were both frustrated, and the agent was visibly exhausted from dealing with similar escalations all day.
And that is the exact friction point this architecture resolves. By removing that 45% of routine volume, your human agents are no longer suffering from the cognitive fatigue of answering the same 10 basic questions for 8 hours a day.
Right. They actually have the energy to deal with real problems.
Precisely. It preserves their bandwidth for complex, high-value interactions. When a customer has a deeply nuanced issue or a situation requiring genuine emotional intelligence and empathy, you need a well-rested human managing that relationship.
It also completely redefines global scalability for local businesses, right? Like a boutique e-commerce brand operating out of Amsterdam instantly gains a 24/7 highly competent support infrastructure.
Exactly. A customer checking out from Tokyo at 3 in the morning local time receives the exact same instantaneous functional resolution as someone shopping from the Netherlands at noon.
So it scales your operational capacity infinitely without scaling your fixed overhead.
That's the dream for any business leader.
But I do want to introduce a layer of complexity here because any CTO listening to this knows that parsing structured text is one thing. But let's be real. The real world is incredibly messy.
Oh, absolutely.
Customers do not communicate in clean, perfectly formatted API requests. So what happens when a customer doesn't possess the technical vocabulary to describe the problem? Or what if they're submitting information in multiple different formats simultaneously?
Yeah, a purely text-based agent, regardless of its autonomy, is going to fail if it cannot comprehend the unstructured chaos of human input. Which is why the current frontier of this technology has moved beyond purely text-based agentic models and into multimodal AI architectures. If agentic AI gives the system hands to execute tasks, multimodal AI gives it the sensory capacity to understand complex, varied inputs.
Meaning it's no longer just reading text. It's ingesting and vectorizing unstructured data from multiple sources.
Precisely. Multimodal AI integrates natural language processing, audio transcription, voice sentiment analysis, and computer vision all into a single cohesive processing engine.
So it can basically handle whatever you throw at it.
Exactly. It allows the customer to interact across whichever channel they prefer, WhatsApp, a web portal, an email, or a traditional voice call. And the AI synthesizes that data seamlessly.
The AetherLink source provided a really brilliant case study on this involving a Dutch logistics company. They're utilizing a multimodal architecture to handle damage claims, which, is notoriously one of the most subjective and friction-heavy processes in customer service.
Oh, without a doubt. Because relying on a customer to accurately type out a description of structural damage to a package is incredibly inefficient and just highly prone to dispute.
Exactly. So instead of forcing the user to type out an explanation, the customer simply takes a photograph of the crushed box with their smartphone and sends it to the support number via WhatsApp.
And then the multimodal AI utilizes advanced image recognition to physically look at the photograph.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
It isn't just saving the file, it's running a spatial analysis on the geometry of the box. It assesses the crush depth and cross-references that visual data against the shipping metadata and carrier drop-off weights.
Yeah, and once it verifies the structural compromise and rules out obvious fraud, it just autonomously approves the claim and initiates the replacement shipment.
And it executes that entire analytical process in milliseconds.
Milliseconds. But the true power of a multimodal architecture is its simultaneous processing capability.
Right, because it's not just doing one thing at a time.
Exactly. While that core engine is analyzing the geometric distortion of a cardboard box via WhatsApp, it is simultaneously managing the incoming voice traffic on the company's main phone lines.
And according to the source data, it's handling those voice queries concurrently in Dutch, English, and German.
Yes. It acts as this omnilingual triage system. It doesn't just passively transcribe the audio and translate it into text for a human to read. It actively analyzes the semantic intent of the query and the language being spoken.
Okay, so give me an example of how that routes.
So if a German-speaking customer calls in with a highly sensitive logistics failure that the AI flags as requiring human empathy, the system instantly routes that specific call directly to a German-speaking human specialist.
Wow. Bypassing the automated queue entirely.
Entirely. And it passes along a complete vectorized summary of the customer's account history to that agent.
So it's dynamically restructuring the support workflow in real time based on the complexity of the input. That's a textbook illustration of what is broadly referred to as AI-led architecture.
Right, where your technical infrastructure ceases to be a passive IT utility that just keeps the servers running.
Yeah, it becomes an active driver of business outcomes, effectively turning the customer service center from a massive cost center into a high-speed efficiency engine.
It fundamentally changes the operational profile of the business.
However, we do need to address the elephant in the room. When you give an algorithm the eyes to analyze a customer's photograph and the hands to issue a refund directly from the corporate treasury, you immediately trigger the highest possible tier of regulatory scrutiny.
Oh, immediately.
And for any European business leader or developer listening, this is the critical friction point. The EU AI Act is arguably the most stringent and complex regulatory framework for artificial intelligence in the world right now, especially regarding high-risk applications and transparency requirements.
It is incredibly robust, and it fundamentally alters how companies have to approach deployment.
Right, because a lot of people are scared of it.
Yeah, a significant portion of the business community initially viewed the EU AI Act purely as a massive operational roadblock, just a nightmare of compliance audits and bureaucratic red tape that would stifle European innovation.
But the source material argues differently.
It does. Navigating this landscape really requires a strategic shift in perspective. The regulatory reality is that the EU AI Act shouldn't be framed merely as a hindrance. It's actually a structural framework designed to enforce brand reputation and solidify long-term consumer trust.
Because, let's face it, the average consumer is still deeply skeptical of how their data is being ingested and utilized by these autonomous systems.
Precisely. If a business can definitively prove, through transparent, audited architecture, that its AI systems are fair, secure, and functioning without hidden biases, that compliance becomes a massive competitive advantage.
It's a verifiable badge of trust.
Exactly. And the Netherlands is currently leading the pack in European AI governance maturity. Companies in the Amsterdam ecosystem that are proactively embracing this transparency are capturing a significant first-mover advantage.
And this is exactly where the strategic value of a specialized consultancy like AetherLink really becomes apparent.
Right.
They aren't simply selling off-the-shelf software and leaving the CTO to figure out the compliance audits on their own. They approach the architecture holistically through 3 distinct integrated product lines.
Which is crucial for this kind of rollout.
Right, so you have EtherBot, which we've been discussing, the actual autonomous agents executing the tasks. But that is supported by EtherMind, which handles the overarching AI strategy and ensures the business logic aligns with regulatory requirements. And finally, you have EtherDV, which is the custom development arm that actually builds out the secure infrastructure.
Yeah, by integrating the operational agents, the strategic governance, and the custom development, they provide businesses with a ready-made, regulatory compliant framework. You are building verifiable compliance directly into the code base from day one, rather than trying to retrofit transparency onto a black box system after a regulator flags it.
Which is always a disaster. And the source material actually outlines a very specific, actionable roadmap for organizations looking to implement this architecture safely under the EU AI Act.
Yeah, it's a great framework.
If you're a CTO sketching out your deployment strategy, this 4-step framework provides a very sobering reality check against moving too fast. Break down step 1 for us.
The implementation sequence is critical for mitigating risk. Step 1 is absolute containment. You start with non-critical use cases.
Which means you do not give your newly deployed, untested AI right access to your primary CRM or your financial gateways on day 1.
No, that is a recipe for a catastrophic compliance failure.
Right. You restrict the agent to a sandbox environment, have it handle routine, low-stakes inquiries like frequently asked questions or basic order status checks where the data is basically static.
Exactly. You allow the core engine to ingest data and learn the specific vernacular of your customer base. And crucially, you allow your human oversight team to learn how the system behaves under load without exposing the company to financial or regulatory risk.
Okay, so if step 1 is containment, step 2 is about proportionally scaling that agency.
Yes. You build step by step toward autonomous tasks only as system trust and verifiable accuracy actually grow.
So it's a deliberate, measured expansion of permissions.
Right. Once the multimodal AI proves it can perfectly parse user intent regarding your return policies and your internal audits verify its accuracy, only then do you authorize it to actively process a low-value return.
You're continuously scaling its operational agency in direct proportion to its audited success rate.
Exactly. And as you scale that autonomy, you hit step 3, which is where the EU AI Act is incredibly strict, maintaining human escalation paths.
Right. The regulation is heavily focused on human-in-the-loop oversight for any process deemed high risk or sensitive.
You can never architect a system where the AI serves as an absolute gatekeeper. There must always be an intuitive, frictionless mechanism for a customer to bypass the algorithm and reach a human being.
Especially if the system encounters an edge case it just cannot resolve, or if the interaction requires nuanced, empathetic judgment.
Yeah, you cannot build a more efficient version of the old customer service doom loop. The exit hatch has to be clearly visible and immediately accessible.
Always. And that brings us to the final, and arguably most important, requirement for long-term compliance, which is step 4. You must regularly audit the system for bias and maintain entirely transparent decision-making logic.
Which means meticulously documenting the provenance of your training data.
So, if the multimodal AI analyzes a customer's photograph and makes the autonomous decision to deny a damage claim, you cannot simply tell the regulators, well, the algorithm said no.
No, they will not accept that. You need to be able to open up the back end and explicitly trace the decision vectors. You have to show exactly why the AI made that specific determination based on the mathematical weights of the data it was trained on.
The era of the algorithmic black box is just over in Europe.
It really is. Transparency is now the foundational currency of trust. If you cannot explain the mechanism behind the autonomous decision, you cannot legally deploy the agent.
Well, this deep dive has covered an immense amount of ground, moving from the macro environment of Amsterdam's tech density down to the micromechanics of vectorizing unstructured data and navigating these European compliance frameworks.
It's a lot to process.
It is. As we synthesize all of this source material, what is the most critical takeaway for you?
For me, the defining lesson is the required shift in how executive leadership views regulatory compliance. Navigating the EU AI Act isn't merely a defensive maneuver to avoid fines, it is an offensive strategy.
I really like that framing.
Embracing architectural transparency and rigorous auditing early on provides a massive first-mover advantage. We are operating in a market where consumers are highly aware of data privacy and algorithmic bias.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So a business that can verifiably state our AI infrastructure is fully transparent, human-audited, and ethically compliant is going to capture the trust of the European consumer far faster than a competitor operating a closed, opaque system. It transforms compliance from a cost center into a core brand feature. What stands out to you?
For me, it's the fundamental paradigm shift in how we define the baseline function of the technology itself. Like, we have to completely abandon the legacy mindset of viewing chatbots as mere deflection tools.
Right, those digital walls.
Exactly. Walls erected solely to keep expensive human customers away from expensive human agents. The transition to agentic and multimodal architectures means we have to start viewing these systems as highly capable, autonomous, 24/7 problem solvers that actually elevate the brand experience.
Yes.
When you upgrade from a digital table of contents to an empowered omnilingual agent that can actually see and execute solutions, you are just trimming operational fat. You are fundamentally upgrading the speed and quality of how your market interacts with your company.
It's a complete re-architecting of the customer journey. And, that operational shift leaves us with a highly provocative thought to consider moving forward.
Let's hear it.
We know the current data indicates AI will soon autonomously manage up to 85% of all routine customer contacts. If a transparent, highly efficient algorithm is permanently taking over the vast majority of those repetitive, low-complexity tasks, what entirely new, deeply human-centric services will your support team be able to invent with all of their newly freed-up bandwidth?
Wow. That is the true leverage of this technology right there. It isn't designed to eliminate the human element from customer service. It's designed to finally unleash it. When your human workforce is no longer forced to act like programmable robots, the ceiling for what they can achieve in building genuine customer loyalty is essentially limitless. More AI insights at etherlink.ai.